Hello all and welcome to Top 10 Games that deserve a My Little Scythe treatment. So with the announcement of My Little Scythe, I got to thinking, what other games could use this treatment? What games are just begging for a child-friendly version? Some of the games on this list are clearly absurd ideas, but not all of them are. In fact, I'd love to see several of these made. This list is in a randomish order, and it's not a categorical top 10. So without wasting any more time, let's see my random, and no doubt completely pointless musings on this incredibly unimportant topic. Now, Castles is a great game, one that I've covered on the channel already, and it revolves around building rooms and wacky castles and scoring points for matching those rooms to the various goals. But the most fun part is building the castle itself. What we need is the Sand Castles of Good King Ludwig, a lighter-weight game that involves starting off with a sand keep and building different parts of the castle using different tiles. Get rid of the money and complex point system and just focus on picking a few tiles each turn. At the end of the game, there would be a simple point scoring for finishing the castle, having the most walls, towers, and the biggest moat. I think that would be a super fun game for kids, so get onto it, Ted. Time Stories is a very popular story-driven game about traveling through time and solving mysteries. But the main criticism of Time Stories is that it costs quite a bit for a game that you can really only play once. I mean, that's why a kid's version, Bedtime Stories, would be a far better game. Kids love hearing the same stories over and over, and you can toe down the game mechanics and make it just about exploring the stories, and make the stories kid-friendly. Sure, the adults in the room might begin to cry when their kid wants to play The Mystery of the Big Brown Bear's Missing Hat for the 100th time, but at least they are playing a game, and not watching something crappy on the TV. Legendary has covered a lot of popular IPs already, from Marvel and Firefly to Aliens and Buffy, but they've all been pitched at the kids of the 80s and 90s crowd. Legendary is a pretty basic system already, so it wouldn't need much mechanical changes, but what it could really benefit from is some other IPs to explore, such as Legendary Dora the Explorer. Instead of battling monsters, you're traveling to exotic locations and exploring things. Based on how the Legendary series works and the power of nostalgia, we should see this one on shelves in a matter of years. Ignacy sure loves games that tell stories, but for the most part, his games tell really depressing stories about people being murdered, people dying of starvation, or people suffocating from lack of oxygen. He needs to turn his eye to more child-friendly stories, so I suggest Young Crusoe, Fun Times on Adventure Island. Instead of wondering where the next meal is coming from, characters can fight against Captain Hook, find buried treasure, be waited on by monkey butlers, and have other wonderful adventures. And please, Ignacy, resist the urge to make it into Lord of the Flies. Jar Legends of a Drift System is a game about building spaceships, exploring, trading, and is pretty much a giant space sandbox game. I mean, look at it. It's magnificent. I have no idea how you'd make it more kid-friendly. All I know is that when I was a kid, if someone dropped off a giant space exploration game with ships like this, with all the missions and adventures, I doubt I would have left the house for at least a year. Who am I kidding? If I had this game as a kid, I'd likely still be living in a basement. I'm actually not living in a basement. Just to clarify that. Tammany Hall is a serious area control game about the vicious politics of 18th century New York, where armed gangs roamed the neighborhoods, immigrants were manipulated, and corruption was rife. Also at this time, hats were way bigger than they are now. Like, seriously bigger. How do you take this game and make it relevant to a young audience? Well, that's easy. Welcome to Tammany High, where new students arrive each semester from different social groups, and your clique must manipulate them in order to win the class presidency. All the vicious politics of 18th century New York translate exceedingly well to the average American high school. Actually, now I think about it, this sounds way more vicious than 18th century New York politics. Hostage Negotiator is a pretty light and simple to play game, but has a very serious and grim theme. Someone is taking hostages and threatening to kill them, and that's a bit dark and a bit outside most kids' experiences. Or is it? Kids have a lot of experience negotiating with terrorists. Terrorists they call parents. In Parent Negotiator, the parent has many chores they want you to do before you can play. You can whine, complain, misdirect, and even do some minor chores in order to wear your parents down so they do what you want. Just don't give in to their final demands before you've calmed them down fully. And what of the company that is making My Little Scythe? Where do they go next? Although now I think about it, one of the first games I ever played on PC was Lemonade Stand, and I played it a lot. The simple premise of owning a lemonade stand, buying the sugar and getting the lemons, and selling the end product would be perfect as a streamlined version of viticulture. It's also a nostalgia thing for parents who grew up with lemonade stands. I assume those are no longer a thing. A game about despair, horror, and full of adult content that some consider pornographic. If any game out there needs a kid-friendly version, it's Kingdom Death Monster. What we'd do is we'd set it in the same world. Kingdom Death, Little Monsters, would focus on the children of the settlement and their playtime activities. Get rid of the crafting and settlement building and cut to the core of the game, where it's a kid wearing an adorable lion hat pretending to fight against their friends armed with paper swords in a very, very serious game of tag. Of course, while marketed to kids, it will still come with 212 different expansions. Okay, for the final entry, and the game that actually most needs a kid's version, it's Near and Far. No jokes, no hyperbole, no nothing. Near and Far is a wonderfully wholesome game already, but a kid's version of this game would be amazing. Exploring, storytelling, a wonderfully unique fantasy world with vibrant characters, and the art of Ryan Lockett. It's a recipe for financial success, and it would be a wonderful game for kids. Mr. Lockett, make it happen. That was fun. Utterly pointless, but quite fun. If any of these get made, I totally want to thank you in the notes though. And finally, a huge amount of respect to Hobie and Vienna Chow for making the original My Little Scythe, and to Jamie Stegmaier for working with them to make it a properly produced and official game. That's the good stuff right there, people. Alright all, like the vid, subscribe to the channel, check out the Patreon if you want to help take part in the channel, and we'll see you next time.